Welcome to Vacuum Wars and to our review of the Mova Z60 Ultra Roller Complete Robot Vacuum. Mova, a sub-brand of the leading robot vacuum company Dreame, has been growing rapidly in popularity, and their new Z60 flagship is, in my opinion, their best offering yet. One of the interesting things about the Z60 is that in many ways it's virtually identical to one of Dreame's products, the Dreame Aqua 10 roller, which we've also reviewed and like. So we bought a Z60 for ourselves and have been testing it in various ways over the past several weeks, and in this video I'll go over the pros and cons of the Mova Z60 and compare it to the Dreame Aqua 10 roller along the way, because I do think that one of these is better than the other, all things considered. So links in the description, and let's get started. Starting off with the basics, the Mova Z60 Ultra Roller Complete is a robot vacuum mop combo that comes with a fully featured multifunctional dock. The complete in its name means that it comes with a significant amount of extras, which is a rare added value. The Z60's list price is about $100 less than the Dreame Aqua 10, but the Aqua 10 has been selling for about $200 or $300 less than the Z60 in recent weeks, so the prices are currently shifting back and forth. As I said, Mova is a sort of sub-brand of Dreame. I'm not sure exactly the language they would use there. In any case, they clearly use many of the same components, but they are not identical. There are definite differences in both hardware and software in key areas. For example, with many of the tests we ran, like with our suction test, they produced almost identical scores. Same story with the airflow test, basically tied. And also in the various practical performance tests, like the crevice pickup test, there was essentially no difference in their performance. They both were also similarly above average in our carpet deep clean test, where we embed sand into medium carpet and weigh their bins before and after. And both were excellent at sweeping up surface debris from hard floors and carpets in our pickup tests, picking up all the types and sizes of debris that we threw at them with no issues like scattering or significant amounts of missed debris. In terms of hardware, they both use the same dual brush main roller first introduced by Dreame, which is open at one end so that the hair channels to one side to reduce tangles. And this worked well in our 7-inch hair tangle test, which was also one of the areas where the Mova Z60 did better than the Dreame Aqua 10, at least in our tests. Though they both were able to completely resist tangles with the 7-inch hair tangle test, the Dreame Aqua 10 kept getting the hair stuck in its intake, even after going back to its base to auto-empty. In 2 out of the 3 rounds of our hair torture test, this happened with the Aqua 10, but not once with the Mova Z60. This could have been just random or operator error on our part, or it could indicate that the Z60 has a slightly different change in the hardware that helps it evacuate large amounts of hair at one time. They both have a very similar single side brush that automatically extends when the robot senses it's near corners, giving them a better reach and corner pickup, which worked well in our testing. Their 2 brushes worked well together for more advanced vacuuming tests too. For example, in our 2.5-inch flattened hair pickup test, where the hair is flattened to mimic real-world pet hair conditions, both of these did much better than average and better than previous Dreame models on this test. The Mova Z60 also features what they call StepMaster 2.0, which lets the chassis lift up automatically when the robot detects a threshold on the map. It can climb single thresholds up to 45 millimeters or 2-tiered thresholds up to 80 millimeters, which is one of the highest in the industry. It's a great option if your house has high thresholds, and it did really well with this in our tests as well. The Z60 also includes a retractable LiDAR, almost identical to the one on the Dreame Aqua 10. The idea is that most of the time, the LiDAR turret extends above the robot for optimal navigation and mapping, but when the robot senses it's nearing furniture that's lower than the turret, it retracts so that it can go underneath. Another big pro for the Mova Z60 Ultra is its obstacle avoidance system. It uses a front-mounted RGB camera, 3D structured light, and an LED light for dark areas, all working together to detect and avoid objects that the robot might otherwise get stuck on. Despite the Mova Z60 and the Dreame Aqua 10 having slightly different obstacle avoidance hardware setups and training data, their results were identical in our testing. Both scored a much higher than average 21 out of a possible 24 in our obstacle avoidance tests, where the the average is around 17, so both were excellent in this area. Now, one area where the Mova Z60 really started to distinguish itself from the Dreame Aqua 10 was mopping performance. At first glance, the mopping hardware looks almost identical, but there are subtle differences in both the hardware and software. Both have a similarly cool feature, what Mova calls Auto Shield Carpet Protection, where when the robot senses carpet, it deploys a moisture shield over the roller to keep the carpets dry. They both use continuous rinse roller mopping systems, where water nozzles constantly rinse the roller, while a squeegee squeezes out dirty water into an onboard dirty water tank. This makes them effective not just for dried stains, but also minor wet spills. Both also feature extendable roller mops that sense when they're near walls or edges and extend slightly to improve edge coverage, and that worked well in our testing too. They even share a relatively new feature that fluffs up the roller during cleaning to keep it fresh and maintain contact with the floor. But the real difference showed up in the mopping performance tests. We ran these multiple times to confirm what we were seeing, and what we saw consistently was that the Mova Z60 outperformed the Dreame Aqua 10 by a significant margin. Both were above average on our stain reduction test, but the Mova Z60 was notably better. And in our new, more difficult mopping test using tougher stains, the Z60 again came out ahead consistently. One possible reason for this difference could be the amount of water that each robot used. We measured that by wiping a 4x4 area with a paper towel after each test and weighing it, and the Dreame Aqua 10 used about half as much water on average across its various water settings compared to the Mova Z60. But the Z60 was still average with water usage. That means it uses just enough water to clean effectively without leaving streaks. So it might have been a result of that or some other small hardware variation. Either way, in our testing, the Mova Z60 was clearly the better mop performer between the two, though again, both were above average overall in combined mopping performance. Another big pro for both models is their multifunctional dock, and here their designs are visibly different, with the Mova Z60 being slightly smaller than the Aqua 10's dock. Basically, when the robots return to charge, the dock automatically empties the robot's dust bin into a disposable bag inside the dock. The base also washes the mop roller, dries it, and refills the clean water tank. And in the case of the Mova Z60, it has a dual solution tank so that you can load two different types of cleaning solution depending on the job. The Dreame Aqua 10 has a similar setup, but one key difference is temperature. Dreame advertises a much hotter mop washing temperature, an industry-leading 212 degrees Fahrenheit, where Mova advertises 176 degrees, which is still the third highest in the industry. The Mova app was another pro for me. I noticed only minor differences between it and the Dreame app. Both are excellent. In fact, I'd call them both top tier. There's lots of control and customization. The layout is intuitive, mapping is fast, and editing the map is simple. Overall, both apps are very good and very similar. Moving on to the cons. Probably the biggest negative for me, and this applies to both robots, was related to navigation speed and battery life. While both navigated more or less intelligently and built accurate maps of our studio floor plans, they were noticeably slower than average during runs. The Mova Z60 was slightly slower than the Dreame Aqua 10, but both were well below average overall. Their battery life was also below average. In our battery efficiency tests, which we do on various power settings on a fixed floor plan, the Z60 managed only 1.05 minutes per percentage point of battery life, and the Dreame Aqua 10 came to 1.02 compared to an average of 1.31. When you combine that with their slow navigation, it translates to an average coverage of about 582 square feet per charge for the Mova and 684 square feet for the Dreame, both well below the average of 1,100 square feet per charge. Of course, they have recharge and resume, so they can return to their base to recharge and then finish the floor plan on a second run, and generally they're still smart, they map well, they have great obstacle avoidance, but they're both just a little slower and less efficient than I would like. Another con with the Mova Z60 is that its auto-empty evacuation isn't as good as the Dreame Aqua 10. This is because, though they have very similar construction, they evacuate debris from their internal dustbin to the base in different ways. The Dreame has a floor-based debris evacuation channel with a short path and a large opening, where the Mova has a smaller hole that goes through a longer path and empties to the base at the side of the robot. And during real-world testing, I did notice a clog in the intake of the Mova. A piece of plastic or something got caught in the channel that leads to the dock. This is not a deal breaker. It just means that especially during the first few runs when there's a lot more hair and debris, you should double check this channel and generally should check for clogs periodically, but it should be fine when you get into the routine of vacuuming several times a week. In the end, after adding up all the scores from all of our tests, both of these robots made the Vacuum Wars Top 20 Robot Vacuum list. But the Mova Z60 Ultra Roller Complete, thanks to its superior mopping performance and better hair management, edged out the Dreame Aqua 10 and, in our opinion, is the better robot vacuum of these two, even if it's slightly more expensive, at least at current prices. Links in the description, and be sure to subscribe to Vacuum Wars before you leave. Thanks for watching. All of the links in the description are updated regularly to reflect our current favorite vacuums in multiple categories. You'll also find links to the Vacuum Wars website in the description, where we have more detailed lists of our favorite products, like our new Top 20 Robot Vacuums list, which is updated weekly.